Hello guys, welcome back to the channel where it is a Pittsburgh Steelers Friday. However, as you can tell, I am wearing my Penguins jersey because they are the only team in Pittsburgh that are giving us any sort of hope right now because, let's face it, the Pittsburgh Steelers are not. So the Pittsburgh Steelers getting ready for tomorrow's game, as they have the past couple of weeks. When was the last time we played a game on a Sunday? Can't tell you. It's certainly been a while. It was the Cardinals game, that was it. Getting ready for this Saturday's game against the Cincinnati Bengals, which effectively represents the last chance, at least in my mind, the last chance we have to get out of this, streak and to save Mike Tomlin's streak, if that means anything to you at this point. Because if we don't win this week, I don't see us then having the momentum or the belief or anything to go against the Seahawks and the Ravens and get wins there. So maybe if we can get a win this weekend, we can use that to turn things around. But if it doesn't, it's just not going to happen. As usual, we start with the injury report for the Steelers. It's pretty straightforward. Kenny Pickett is out. Trenton Thompson is out. Minka Fitzpatrick is out. And Elijah Riley is listed as questionable. And just a quick roster note, Miles Jack, obviously who we had last season, has been with the practice squad for the past couple of weeks. And obviously Mike Tomlin feels that now he's, and the doctors feel that he's ready to go. So he's been called up to the active/inactive roster, along with a couple of others, but Miles Jack is the main man that we want out of that. Someone who I thought was doing quite well last year, but was hampered by injury, so hopefully he's ready to go and can help us this week, because Lord knows we need help at the middle linebacker position. And for the Bengals, it's even easier, and that is the wide receiver Jamar Chase is also out. Whether or not you think that's any sort of benefit, given how badly the Steelers have still been playing in the past couple of weeks, I'll leave that up to you. But anyway. So that's the injury report, but before we do that, as we just mentioned, Jamar Chase, wide receiver, we need to talk about the other wide receiver, one that's been making a lot of headlines this week, and that is George Pickens. Through his actions and through his words, basically. We all saw the footage last week that was coming out of Indianapolis, where he... excuse me. That was coming out of Indianapolis, where he basically refused to block Jalen Warren's run. He gave the excuse that he didn't want to get injured, which, if you want to believe it, is fine. But if you look back at what George Pickens has done throughout his career, even going back to the preseason, when games don't really matter, and you saw how aggressively he was throwing blocks, the fact that he wanted to use not getting injured as an excuse, it is an excuse. I'm not buying it. If you want to, that's fine, but I don't believe it, especially given the proof that we have. And I think for him, whilst I've said in previous weeks that, especially after the Arizona Cardinals game, I think it was looking towards the New England game, that I wanted teams to answer back and, show up and all those sorts of things to show that these guys can actually do something with their season. The whole thing, it stands for the whole team, but for George Pickens in particular this week, after he made such a name for himself and has effectively put a target on his back for the media in general, but also for the Bengals, you just think, you've done all this, you have to now go and have to go out and prove it. So can't afford any drops. I would expect the Cincinnati Bengals to try and rile him up and sort of get him to be a little bit chippy and maybe get some penalties between plays and what have you. So I'd expect that, and you just have to hope that he's able to rise above it. But again, given his attitude and how he seems to be trending towards the diva sort of wide receiver, then you'd have to think he is susceptible to that sort of thing. Again, hopefully he isn't, but you have to think that he is. So this has to be a monster game from George Pickens if he wants to, there's even been talk, some rumours on social media and amongst, Mike Flora was asking on NBC, is it possible that the Steelers are to trade him in the off-season? So if he wants to stay a Steeler and he wants to, even arguably stay in the NFL and prove that he's not a problem case, this is the game that you think he has to come out and prove it. So hopefully he does, not only for him, not only for the team, but for himself as well, and his long-term chances in the NFL. And speaking of long-term chances in the NFL, we also have to address the other elephant in the room, and that is everything that's going on surrounding Mike Tomlin. And I just think, I've said this on other social media outlets, I just think that this is going to be his last season. You look at all the rumours that are going around, Jay Glazer putting the feelers out on Fox, as it were, for the Washington Commanders to go and trade for him rather. There will be other head coaching openings opening up this season, whether or not any of them are enticing to him. But you would imagine if the Steelers were to move on, or if they were to say, yes, he is available, what have you got? There will be multiple teams that will go and offer draft picks for him. And it just seems like this is a natural ending to it. You know, you look at where we're at with Kenny Pickett and Omar Khan as the GM, and how the cycles usually go with other teams, at least, and how, you know, they give the quarterback a certain amount of time with the head coach, but then who was there longest, they have to move on from the head coach, then the GM has to come in. The bits and pieces that go on, it just seems like if there's only going to be, he's next in effect, because we moved on at quarterback from Roethlisberger to Pickett, we moved on from GM, from Colbert to Khan. He's next on the chopping block if things go the way that they are at least trending to in the past couple of weeks. So if this is a loss, which I do think is going to be a loss, then, as I mentioned earlier, the sort of rollerball effect of, right, lose against the Bengals, lose against the Seahawks, lose against the Ravens, that's a 6-loss streak to end the year. And whilst you can appreciate what Mike Tomlin's done, winning us the Super Bowl, keeping us competitive, not putting us in the Cleveland Browns situation where we've been bad for a number of years, or the Jaguars for the past 10 years or so, not putting us in those situations and winning us a Super Bowl and getting us to another Super Bowl and multiple playoff appearances never. It just feels like, again, with also these things about it, maybe he's lost the locker room, or maybe his way isn't sitting with the younger players or the current roster. It just seems like now is the right time to do it. So you'd have to think maybe he wants to go out and win what could be his final game at Heinz Field. And again, hopefully, maybe again, like George Pickens, this is a time to say, right, I belong in the NFL. I belong with the Steelers. You don't want to get, you don't want to get rid of me. You're going to have to do tooth and nail to get rid of me. I'm going to leave you with, if we somehow rattle off 3 wins and get to 10-7, how do you trade away, or how do you fire a coach that does that? So there are a lot of players who need to, and coaches who need to stand up and be counted this weekend. And those two, George Pickens and Mike Tomlin, are the biggest two. You can talk about whether or not Najee Harris needs to start being better in the running game, or Deontay Johnson needs to be a little better, or the offensive line, or whatever. Everyone has their problems, but I think the two biggest ones, especially because of the media circus and speculation that's been going on surrounding them this week, George Pickens and Mike Tomlin are the main two. So that has to be, or that's what I'm certainly going to be looking out for this weekend as we take on the Bengals. With all that being said, though, as we move on to the score prediction, I do not think we are going to win. I just think there just is a slump that I don't think we're getting out of it. No, and even if George Pickens manages to pick up his game, does that translate, or do the rest of the players translate? There's also the question of Mason Rudolph. Is he, in a position to win us a game? Whilst I think he could be better than Mitchell Trubisky, you look at what he's done in the past, rustiness as well. I just don't feel confident with him at quarterback. I mean, I'm more confident than I was with Mitch Trubisky, but still not as confident as I was when Ben Roethlisberger and everything was there. So with that being said, I'm going to go for a Pittsburgh Steelers loss. Probably keep it somewhat competitive, but it's going to be by 21-14, which I say will put us at 7-8, and then you'd have to think pretty much, I mean, I'm not sure mathematically, but realistically would end whatever slim playoff chances we have, and then basically it's all aboard for next season and what that's going to bring, which could bring a lot of speculation and a lot of question marks, especially with Mike Tomlin, as I mentioned earlier, but, we'll just have to wait and see. Other than that, though, this is going to be the last preview before Christmas. I will be doing the reaction after the game, but if you don't see that, then just want to say happy Christmas, and with a bit of luck, Happy New Year to you as well. So until then, you guys take care.